I'm Sarah Thomas, the director of the Haase Library Learning Center. Thank you for coming to the 8th Annual Scholarly Speaking Program. This year we have included a special birthday party for Haase Library. We opened 5 years ago on March 24th, 2008. We enjoy hosting the scholarly speaking event each year because we believe that the Prescott campus authors deserve public recognition, and we are pleased to provide a celebration for you. We believe it is important for librarians and faculty to work together to recognize the scholarship that occurs on this campus. I would like to take this opportunity to announce that this summer the university will be implementing a digital repository called Scholarly Commons to preserve Embry-Riddle faculty and student publications and to showcase the publications in an open access system. I urge you to submit your profile and publications after the Scholarly Commons system is launched. Now I'd like to thank the committee members, Joanne Evanoff, Chair, Brittany Blanchard, Suzanne DeLong, Linda Eisner, Susie Roth, Patricia Watkins for all of their hard work to produce this program. A special recognition goes to Kathy Hill and Steve Merchant and Hillary. This year we have produced a bibliography with 36 authors. At the conclusion of the program, we invite the contributors to stay afterward for a group photo opportunity on the staircase. We will post it on the library website and on Facebook. The program includes citations for the calendar year 2012 only from those authors who provided them. This is not a complete list. There may be other authors who are not included. Today, I'm excited to present those authors who have works published or papers presented in the year 2012. Dr. Bloom, Richard Bloom, the Chief Academic Officer, will be presenting the certificates of
I just being enthusiastic.
Just a brief comment. We're here today to celebrate people who know things, and that's why they're published. They publish what they know. Now, what's interesting about that is that knowledge changes with time, and our knowledge today may be very different than knowledge a few hundred years from now, certainly different from knowledge a few thousand years before. And I'll just share very briefly what I've been doing most of my professional life is trying to figure out how one knows anything. The nature of reality, whether it's human reality or non-human, know whether one knows anything or not, knows what's right or wrong. And there are fancy words that go along with all of that. Words like epistemology, hermeneutics, and exegesis in the religious area, historiography, but all dealing with how do we know anything. Well, each person recognized today is making the bold and proud claim that they actually know something. I'm somewhat skeptical, especially with myself, but you'll make up your own minds, and this is really a great event. I applaud Director Thomas and all her staff for making this happen today, and all of the folks who are going to be recognizing for the work they've done about what they know, or better yet, what they think they know. So at this point, Director Thomas.
When I call your name, please come up to the front to be recognized for your publications. Quentin Bailey, Parallels Between the Photon and Gravity Sectors of the SME, Recent Developments in Modern Cosmology. Angela Beck is not here. Sally Bloomstrom. Service learning as a pedagogical approach for net generation learners, a case study. Dr. Richard Bloom, a challenge to career psychologists and psychological careers, review of crime in a psychological context from career criminals to criminal careers. Counterterrorism, experts discuss reforming transportation security. Testimony before the House Homeland Security Committee, Transportation Security Subcommittee. Knowledge on knowledge and deception, review of memory detection, theory and application of the concealed information test. Risk-based security, making the concepts a reality, published proceedings. She's got the look, review of Spy the Lie, former CIA officers teach you how to detect deception. Strategic security challenges, global aviation and cargo industry, published proceedings. Leanne Chen is unable to come today. Michael Fabian, I saw him someplace, there you are, okay. Implementation of a new mechanical engineering propulsion detail design capstone course. Integration of mechanical and aerospace engineering preliminary design capstone course. Thomas Bill. Ideology is strategy, military-led modernization, and the origins of the Alliance for Progress in Bolivia. In addition, Dr. Field has a contract for a new book to be published this fall. Andre Grederson.
He's in Washington.
In Washington. Scott Hamilton. Labor Relations in the Aviation and Aerospace Industries, Study Guide. Brenda Haven.
She's teaching.
Okay, James Helbling.
Went home.
Brendan Huey.
Not a conference.
Douglas Isenberg, one of our speakers. Identifying the thermal parameters and controlling the temperature of high-altitude balloon payloads. On the air quaternion difference, and the control effort of quaternion-based attitude control laws. Dorothea Ivanova. She's in class.
She's at a conference.
She's in DC.
Well, good.
Everybody
You guys all met there and
Yep,
had
I was
coffee?
in the plane with her.
Oh. Okay, Curtis James. Anatomy of a Thunderstorm. Philip Jones. Global security equals human sustainability. Planning for resettlement in large-scale infrastructure projects. Eileen Landis-Grown. Beanie, incorporating the art of storytelling in writing and speech courses. A name. Viola Starry.
Is that what our
Nika Nordgraf. Well, the lingo of our calling, cowboys and their vocabulary, and reflected in poetry, oral and traditional arts panel,
yeah, I noticed the one you recommended something.
trappings of the America West. Brian Nordstrom. Two books, Smart Guide to Chemistry and Smart Guide to Hiking and Backpacking.
So that's on the big expensive. Is that okay?
Ken Parsons is in Florida. Ed Poon is in class. Ed Post. I didn't see him come in. Susie Rock. The incredible shrinking library, growing the collaborative footprint. Joel Skiver. Knowledge-based clinical toxicology consultant for diagnosing single exposures. Mark Sinclair, one of our speakers from last year. EMALAST, a community effort to intercompare extratropical cyclone detection and tracking algorithms, assessing method-related uncertainties. Daryl Smith, and I thank him for the English translation of this. Dual baseline search for muon neutrino disappearance in the region of delta M squared between 1/2 and 40 electron volts squared, both online and in print.
Sounds good.
Robin Sabata. Lance Traub. Isa Susui. Patricia Watkins. Lily. Prescott Lakes Parkway, Cinco de Mayo, Information Literacy and Faculty Collaboration, a new model for student learning success, a bridge view of Hoover Dam, Plateau Point at Grand Canyon, the incredible shrinking library, growing the collaborative footprint. Melanie Wetzel. Global security equals human sustainability. Congratulations. Lee Young. Kelly Hong of Prescott and her America Dream. Paper Sons and Chain Migration, Immigration Strategies of the Gin Clan in Tucson, Arizona during the Chinese exclusion era. Sociologist Rose Hung Lee, teaching Chinese color words as cultural symbols. Young Tan, a Northern Song scholar official and his frustrated military career. Alvin Yan. Morality, knowledge, love, a consummate, homogeneous inception of man. Michele Zanolin, right from Washington. Just rolled off the plane, one of our speakers. Swift follow-up of observations of candidate gravitational wave transient events, all-sky search for gravitational wave bursts in the second joint LIGO-Virgo run, the characterization of Virgo data and its impact on gravitational wave searches, first low-latency LIGO-Virgo search for binary inspirals and their electromagnetic counterparts, implementation and testing of the first prompt search for gravitational wave transients with their electromagnetic counterparts, search for gravitational waves from intermediate mass binary black holes, search for gravitational waves from low mass compact binary coalescence in LIGO's 6th science run and Virgo's science runs 2 and 3, upper limits on a stochastic gravitational wave background using LIGO and Virgo interferometers at 600 to 1,000 hertz, all-sky search for periodic gravitational waves in the full S5 LIGO data. Okay. Tom John is unable to come today. Congratulations to each and every one of you for publishing and presentation accomplishments. We believe it's important for librarians and faculty to work together to recognize the scholarship on this campus. This year, Dr. Zanolin, Dr. Northam, and Dr. Isenberg have graciously accepted to be our guest speakers. Our first speaker is Dr. Michele Zanolin from the Physics Department in the College of Arts and Sciences. His research areas include gravitational waves detection and acoustic sensing. Dr. Zanolin.
Okay. So first of all, I would like to thank Sarah Thomas for inviting me. It's a pleasure, and also for giving me an idea of what I should talk about. The question she asked me to try to address is how do I do my research, maybe as a way to compare how everybody does research. And the way I thought it was better to start, there are 3 slides of bullets at the end that probably are. Oh, sorry. Sorry. So there are 3 slides of bullets at the end. Sorry. And for some of you might be interested in those slides, and I thought that probably it's better to start in a slightly less boring way. And the way I wanted to start is why I feel excited about some of the things I work on. So I'm an astrophysicist, and even if this page doesn't look like, this is a publication from the observatory of the Song dynasty in China. And this publication is was published in 1340. And is a description of the most important astronomical events they observed in the previous 300 years. And one of the events that they described was a new star, a very bright star that was in the sky in 1096 for just a week, and then the star disappeared. And it's kind of interesting that 900 years after the fact, people built a telescope. And they actually pointed in that location, and this is what they saw. And this is the Crab Nebula, and it's the remnant of an explosion of a star. And they found in the center of this Crab Nebula a neutron star, a star that has roughly the mass of our sun condensed in a radius of 6 miles, an object that never was observed before. And it was quite a surprising event that spurred a lot of learning in physics and excitement. And it turns out that if you go a little further with the theory of general relativity, there's not just an explosion here. There is a deformation of space-time. When something really massive explodes, it shakes the fabric of space-time. And this is a plot of the deformation of space-time around the location of the supernova, and literally time flows differently, and the dimension of the objects actually change. And while the electromagnetic radiation goes away, there are also ripples in space-time that are called gravitational waves, and that's the field where I do my research. These ripple in space-time, initially they start from the supernova, and then they start moving away, and they come to the Earth, and they tell a story. They tell stories that we cannot observe with the eyes, and because they have been formed in a different way from electromagnetic waves. And when they arrive on the Earth, we try to detect them with objects like this. And this is one of the sensors I work on. These are 4 kilometers by 4 kilometers. These gravitational waves stretch, in a strange way, space-time, and we try to measure the stretching and record it as a sound. And we try to learn the story that the sound conveys. And there are incredible stories. You learn what is space, what is time, and what does it mean to be a particle. And this is an example of one of the things that is intriguing me the most recently. And gravitational waves allow you to confirm and understand some predictions of general relativity. And one of the predictions is called wormholes. Wormholes is the idea that you could start from one position at a certain time and go to another position in two different ways. One way, it might take 10 years. Another way, it might take 2 seconds. And this is actually a real implication of the equations that somehow says that if you have something called negative energy, you can travel in time. It's really shocking, but it comes out from the equations. And for me, it's really intriguing that you can actually investigate these things. So somehow when I do my research, on one foot, I like to think about all the technological implications that I can learn, but with the other foot, I get to think about what is really space-time, what is the container where we live, and what are what is the meaning of the things, and I find it really, really fascinating. And actually, about this thing, the wormhole, there is a movie under production from Steven Spielberg called Interstellar, where there is this NASA spacecraft that enters in a wormhole and comes out 50 years after, and it's supposed to come out, I think in 2014, but anyway. So this is why I do research, because I find that these things are really intriguing, but I also do it because I think it is a way to become somehow a better version of myself, and maybe I still feel like the little kid that was watching Star Wars and is dreaming to become a Jedi. That's roughly pretty close the way I see it. And this is the boring part. This is how things work out in the nitty-gritty detail. How do I do my research? I read many papers. I do a lot of calculation and measurements. I interact with as many people as possible, because one collaboration is capable of doing things that an individual cannot do. I try to give very precise tasks to my students, and some don't like it. If they have a good idea, I let them go ahead with the idea. Otherwise, I give them the work to do every day. And it takes me a couple of years to reach productivity in a new field. It's not something that one day you start studying and you gain new understanding. That's the hope I have every time I start. And then I realize it's not, I hope, at the beginning I always hope it's 3 months, then it's 2 years. And it takes planning, and I have to schedule my time, I have to carve time to be able to think. I have to plan in parallel, 1 year plans and 5 years plans. I don't believe you can do real planning longer than 5 years. Pretty much when everybody says it's going to take more than 5 years, it's because they have no idea how long it's going to take. That's my opinion. And most importantly, I can do this because we have a support from the university. I think this campus has a lot of desire to support real research. It doesn't mean that if someone doesn't want to do research or wants to do, not really be serious about it, you will be able to do as much as you want, but there really is a great support for research. And so I think that the help that I have from collaborators and from the university is really important. And ultimately, this would not happen without the approval of my wife. And the other question that Sarah asked me to address is that the writing and the publishing process. And I try to write paper that I'm sure will be published. There's no need to submit to Nature if you know they don't need that kind of paper. And writing, I know it's very regular process. The first month is fast. I know the first draft comes out fast, and there is a lot of pain and work out the rest. I try to have many papers going on at the same time, usually 3 papers, one close to maturity, one in the middle, one just starting. And I have support also from the library. I think the library has been doing a great job. I think I'm probably one of the worst customers of their library, because I usually come with questions like, I need the page 17 of XXX or nothing in one day. But that's nature of my research. I think other departments have different needs, they can do things in a different way, but that's the way it works in my field, and I think that's the way it works in a lot of technical fields. I find myself surprisingly using more and more Wikipedia and YouTube. I guess maybe because there are a lot of universities that are putting online courses, and maybe it's something we should investigate. Because sometimes you say, oh, I want to learn something of this course or specifically this topic. If they put the whole course, you can scroll through all the lectures and just listen to half an hour of the lecture that you really want to know. And this gives you reputation. And I think we have a lot of unique skills here that we might want to use to improve our image. Maybe it might even help with the enrollment. And the last bullet that Sarah asked me to address, if there is any lesson learned, and that's really hard to try to give lesson learns. I have a way to operate. I think deep down you need to love what you do, and you need to understand that you're a human being that takes time to ramp up and be able to do things. So you have to be patient and motivated at the same time. But and research is really hard work, but I think it can really make a big difference, change who you are, and help you give the power to change society. And so it gives you a lot of optimism in general. And ultimately, I think I learned that, I think our library is a wonderful place. I've always been a lover of libraries. I like to hide in libraries once in a while. And I think our library is really going in a direction that is going to help the research, not just with the support, but with the fact that we're trying to make it a learning center, with the Grant Center, the URI, the Media Center, the Mac Lab upstairs. I think that's the right way to go, because students will have needs that will evolve, and we need to evolve with the needs. So that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Zanolin. That was very entertaining and inspiring. And our next speaker is Dr. Gary Northam. He's the Dean of the College of Aviation. His research focuses on aviation safety ethics, and aviation human factors. He has also been on the editorial board for the Journal of Aviation and Aerospace Education and Research.
Thank you. So, collegiate aviation, research, and writing. I look out and I can count one aviation person here, and their dean is speaking. Does that say something about collegiate aviation, research, and writing? Does it really go together? That's a question I'm asked a lot. Historically, collegiate aviation programs have emphasized the importance of professional piloting experience more than academic research expertise. But I've had an opportunity to meet with a lot of airline executives and airline recruiters. 100%, I'm telling you, 100% of them say, I'm not too worried about the piloting skills, but I want my people to know something about work ethics and working in a group and presenting and writing reports. So what that says is, even for the people who are going into the piloting experience, All of us are important. And we are to think about that as an important aspect of what we do. So, if these things are important, we must give the aviation world a well-educated candidate for the piloting profession, right? For me, this is where the importance of research in aviation comes into the picture. To expand the minds and the knowledge of our students, and we as professors have the responsibility to think about, to develop new ideas, to generate new knowledge for our profession. That's what research is all about. To do this, the academic professional must consider the importance of research in the field. And if you look at the opportunities that aviation folks have about research and about publishing, you'll see that it's not as good as some other fields. And all you have to do is count the number of professional journals we have as an opportunity for publishing. There are some fields that there are literally hundreds of journals that you can publish in aviation. There are few. The few that we have been around for a while. The Collegiate Aviation Review is a good example. That's sponsored by the Aviation Collegiate Association. And has been around for a long time. The Journal of Aviation, Aerospace Education and Research, that's one that's done out of aviation on the East Coast, namely our sister campus there. The International Journal of Applied Aviation Studies, that's one the FAA does. It publishes out of Oklahoma City. And then there are a number of others that have come and gone, one being the Journal of Air Transportation Worldwide, which I've used quite a bit. That is no longer being published. If we look beyond that, though, for aviation, and we see other journals like Management and Aviation Management, Aviation Society, Psychology, Human Factors, and those kinds of things, there are others available. The problem is that many times we in the aviation field have not been very well trained in the expertise that is required to do that kind of writing, even though that is available to aviation. You know, as I look back on this and as I look back on my career, I don't really consider myself to be a great researcher. I enjoy the results of the labor of research and writing, but I certainly don't find it very easy, and maybe you agree with me on that. Even though this is true, I really have been able to establish some sort of an agenda, and that in the professional ethics and some in human factors, particularly as applied to aviation and pilot training. But rather than talk about my research here today, I really want to talk about where it started, because I believe that is the part that we really may need to concentrate on, especially if we have helped new people in the field. And mine really started when I had got that first job at a community college in San Antonio way back in 1989. But even though that's when I really started seriously thinking about this, it wasn't when it really started, because I believe it started with a dream. The dream really is the motivation to teach. And the dream was really my motivation to even think about writing, even thinking about the capability of writing. And when I finish, I think you'll know why I would have said that at that time. Every one of us has had a dream. At least I hope so. Because you see, I'm a dreamer. And there are always those dreamers among us. But there are those special dreamers among us they're special because they have this uncanny ability to see the possibilities and see the potential of the future and persist until that dream happens. So I want to share with you something of my professional life that's led me to here, and I consider it part of the stuff that my dreams are made of. The story began way back in 1957, and yes, I can remember 1957. My brother, 12 years my senior, was away at college majoring in pre-engineering. He spent 2 years there, returned home and to work at the local steel mill. And I guess, you know, when you have a brother that's older than you always look up to him. It was that time that I decided that I wanted to be an engineer. Well, you can see from where I came from, I didn't make it there. That's a long story, but about the same time that I saw that and thought that, I began noticing the great silver airplanes flying over my backyard in rural East Texas. And I would stand out there in the middle of the day and shade my eyes with my baseball cap or with my hand and struggle and strain to see that airplane and listen to the rumble of those huge engines as they would go from horizon to horizon. I remember it to this day. Yes, I decided at that time it would be aeronautical engineering for me. So as a result of that decision, I chose to take every science course I could find in my little high school and every math course I could find. Literature, on the other hand, is out the window. That wasn't my interest. I didn't care about spending the afternoon reading when I could be outside, playing ball or drawing runways in the sand or whatever. The dream was buried, really. But it wasn't lost. College came, 7 years of school, 13 years of work in a field that I really didn't enjoy. It didn't make me happy. But what was funny about this and what is paradoxical about it is that this same thing where I was not so happy gave me something that opened my life and opened my mind. You see, I was pointed to my second year in college to the bookstore to a group of books. I walked in to get my book for sophomore lit. I walked out with 15. Scared this boy to death. I started looking through them and I saw things like the Odyssey, the Iliad, Phaedra, with authors like Homer and Machiavelli and Cervantes, and as familiar as those things are for me today, I had never seen them, I had never heard of them, and it literally scared me to death. I had that all the way through that semester, and as you might think, I didn't do so well. So I took it again the next semester, and I was really lucky because I got a professor of literature who was able to help me move from where I was to where I could be. There was a gap there, and during that time, I couldn't see beyond it. But when I was introduced to the Odyssey and started reading that, I said, wow, here is an adventure. Maybe this is not going to be so bad after all. And, we read all the others. I read some of them. The Iliad was really kind of hard for me. We read The Prince, and even though I was fascinated by it, I wasn't sure exactly what it meant at that time. I certainly wasn't sure about the impact. But then we came to the great work of Cervantes, Don Quixote de la Mancha. I was captivated. Power and insanity. And what you can learn from insanity was really amazing. And the dream just really came alive for me. And because I saw the old man in that book live it. And as I recall my 3 years at this college, the paradox is striking because this fairly narrow monoculture of private religious college that I was in, I received an education that truly opened my eyes to the possibility of a dream and the possibility of doing something new. Isn't it funny how you can learn from a crazy man? Isn't it true that those that we stereotype in different images from our own usually have something wonderful and enlightening to teach us, and all we have to do is just open our eyes and watch and look and listen? When I was introduced to Don Quixote, I knew immediately that he was different, and I wondered what I would be able to learn from him. I followed him through unusual and insane quests and wondered what Cervantes was trying to say. Then I realized why Sancho Panza was such a devotee. The man was charismatic. He was captivating. More than that, he was a dreamer. And I guess to this day, Dreaming the Impossible Dream has been one of my favorite songs. But it was finally with this that I allowed the dream that I had always had there, under the surface, hidden, come forward. The first thing I did after graduate school was, well, the first thing I did was get a job, like we all do. But the second thing I did was learn to fly. And the story of why I waited that long is a longer story. You probably don't want to hear that, but that's a different story, and I won't tell you. But it was exhilarating. But at that time, I had a wife and a baby girl, beautiful baby girl that I had to take care of, so still couldn't quite do it. 1989, as I mentioned before, was when it really came alive, and I was able to get a position with a community college teaching aviation, pilot training in San Antonio. The result of that was this part of my new life was to think about what I'm going to do. And that's when I really started thinking about what to do about writing and what to do about research. But I was thinking about it, and I still do. I think about it from the part of what contribution can I make to the field of aviation. And that contribution really is research and writing. Yes, the contribution can go through teaching, and we do a great job of that here. But I think we have a responsibility as a person in the field, in an academic field, to contribute to that field, and I believe this is where we do that. And I believe that should be, and that is, the stimulus many times for what we do in research and what we do in our field. Because if we truly want this field to increase and we truly want it to be enhanced, then our part is an important part of that. Maybe you've had a similar dream. My quest after 20 plus years in the field is to continue to live that dream, to continue to dream, and to try to make a difference for those who come after me. And that is really important to me. It's not about me. I really believe that. It's not about what I accomplish, other than the fact that what I do, I hope, will be a contribution to the field of aviation education. And it's, as my favorite songwriter, Harry Chapin, titled in one of his very wonderful songs, he called it "A Better Place to Be." And I believe that's where we are. I want to finish with a poem that tells this story. There once was born in a young lad of 10 a marvelous plan that concerned the men who flew the great wings of silver in the sky. As he watched them streak, he wanted to fly. Models of plastic and runaways in the sand, Sky King, his cousin, and others. It was grand. He made a commitment to himself years ago. I'll learn to fly. Where? When? I don't know. In high school, other things didn't mean so much as his plans to fly, to design, and such. But he was not helped to reach the sky. Not no to this, no to that. They thought he might die. Then something happened to him after a while. The dream wasn't lost, but covered, beguiled. As a plan was developed for noble goals by everyone, it seemed, but his very own soul. A fleeting glimpse, he saw it again. The chance finally came, and he gave in and found a bit of the long-lost dream. Flying was as wonderful as it ever seemed. Then babies came and work increased. An effort was put to making ends meet. A garbage route offered some relief, and it really did. And the dream continued underneath. Finally, like Don Quixote, it seemed, who loved and fought and lived the dream, he reached out and took it away, not small, yet the dream was not really visible at all. So it doesn't matter how hard you try, you just can't cover the call from the sky. When you get, what you get is a feeling that's open and free. The dream is down. Excuse me.
Thank you, Dr. Northam. Nice combination of science and social sciences. Our last speaker is Dr. Douglas Isenberg from the Aerospace and Mechanical Engineering Department in the College of Engineering. His research area focuses on dynamics and control with applications in space robotics.
Okay, so I'm going to speak a little bit about my research background and some of the research work I've done. talk about the process. So my research is primarily in the field of dynamics and control. Probably about 70% of which is dealt with robots. As a graduate student, I worked on space robots, which is basically a manipulator with an attached, or a satellite with an attached manipulator. And systems like this are described by a fairly common form of a differential equation. So the field is largely based on studying this equation and finding functions, f, of the system coordinates that drive, or rather alter the dynamics of the system to something that's more useful. Which is the field of controls. And we can design for position control, trajectory tracking, even force control. We can regulate the amount of force that a robot is applying to the environment. Some of the recent research that I've done concerns control laws in terms of quaternions. And this really fell out of my dissertation research, an unanswered question that I eventually got around to looking at last year rather. And I got to the point where I was able to prove that a common control law in the literature is actually equivalent to what I was doing in my PhD dissertation. So that was a big discovery from myself. In that same paper, I also looked at an axis angle feedback law, which I've never seen. And the reason we go to this, or we would want to, I found that you get slightly faster rise time in your response. So your system's able to perform quicker by using this control law. Another area of research that I've been looking at recently, it's not really my serious research, which is the dynamics and control, but this is high altitude ballooning, which has come about from my participation in instructing AE 325 and 326. We send up high altitude balloons every semester. I'm sure you've probably seen something about it. And every semester I try to come up with some different experiments. This semester we're looking at attitude determination. We're implementing a complete algorithm and sensor package to perform this. Last year, we looked at the identification and control of temperature dynamics. And this is an ongoing experiment, really. We're trying it out again this year to see how well we do. Here's a plot of what we came up with. This dashed line is the external temperature of the atmosphere. The dotted line is the internal temperature of the payload itself. And the solid line, which they don't show up very well, but the solid line is our predicted temperature with the included controller. And it turns out to be pretty good, but we're going to try this out a few more times this semester to see what happens. An ongoing research topic that I've been working on is attitude trajectory interpolation. So the basic statement of the problem is, given a set of waypoint orientations and angular velocities, what is the minimum angular acceleration trajectory between those waypoints? This turns out to be a curve on the surface of a 4D sphere. And we don't know how to solve this problem yet, but there is a necessary condition that has been found. I actually found this independently and discovered that a guy in Australia found this in 1989. But we have a condition for the optimal trajectory, but so far it hasn't been solved. So this is my plan for this summer's research, and I've been working on this for 4 or 5 years now without any real big success, but I have some ideas, so hopefully I can get something accomplished this summer. My research process as a state machine. It always starts off with an idea or some event. Spontaneous ideas happen every once in a while. Not as frequently as they used to, but they do. Or I'll see a conference or event that I'd like to attend, and I'll work towards going to that. And it usually starts off with a sketch, doodling on paper what my idea is, and trying to work off of that. If I can come up with something, I go on to formulate the problem more thoroughly through derivations and actually try to come up with the equations. Throughout this entire process, there's a lot of idle thinking involved. And that's the hard part for me about research. Just the amount of pure time you spend not doing anything but thinking about the problem. It kind of feels like I'm wasting time sometimes. But occasionally there's progress. So once I formulate my problem, I'll move on to numerical simulations. And if that's successful, and I need a proof, I'll do that. If not, I'll go on to write the paper. Sometimes these ideas go nowhere, and they get stuck in the thinking state. That happens more often than not. And also throughout this entire process, the idea of understanding what I'm doing involves going to the literature, reading, seeing if it's been done before. If it has, then, well, why really continue unless you can build upon it or find something else to do? My writing process, usually I write with a specific conference or journal in mind. I regularly attend the International Conference on Systems Engineering. Well, I won't do it this year, but every 2 years I try to go. Also, the Southeast Symposium on System Theory, which is a conference my PhD advisor introduced me to, which is a regional conference. But there's some really good papers that come out of that and really good talks, so I enjoy going to that one, and hopefully I can go again next year. On robotica, if I can get my trajectory interpolation down pat, that will be where I publish, I hope. But again, it's, as we heard earlier, try to submit to a journal or a conference where you could be successful or where the work will be well received. And I always look for conferences that I don't really know about yet, but maybe are relevant to my work. That's how I've gotten into publishing with the high altitude balloons. I'm actually going to a conference next week for the AIAA Balloon Systems Conference to present some work. But the IEEE Humanoids Conference came about that way, as well as the Academic High Altitude Conference. I also never write at home. I just find too many distractions, and my books, my papers, or everything's in my office there for me to use. And I don't have that luxury at home. So I try to do all my work here, which sometimes means longer hours than I would like. Lessons learned, distractions, that's the hardest thing for me. Coming from recently a PhD program where I was able to sit around all day and stare at problems, stare at an equation, I don't have that luxury anymore. They're not unwelcome distractions, but they're just part of the job, and it's hard to do analytical and theoretical research when you're bombarded, maybe that's the wrong word, when you're confronted with things frequently. On the plus note, I found that experimental research in such a setting is much more feasible for myself, particularly the system identification type research, which is doesn't involve quite the amount of idle downtime and deep concentration, at least for myself. And it's easier to get students involved. It's another benefit that I found to the experimental type of research. And age. I've noticed this for a long time, that the older I get, the harder it is to come up with ideas. And I don't think I'm that old yet, but I do notice it, and that just means working harder, trying to come up with things, and sometimes it just doesn't happen. That's it. I have a question slide, if there are any. If not, thank you.
Thank you to all of you who came today, who participated, published, presented, and are supporters of researchers and people who have dreams and follow those dreams. This concludes this year's program. Thank you so much for coming.